Welcome to this Waitai Coastal-Burwood Community Board Submissions Committee meeting. I'll start with apologies. So we'll call Linda an apology for lateness. I hope she turns up. Any declarations of interest in regards to the Waitai Estuary and Coastal Draft Stormwater Management Plan?
Sorry, baby, we just needed a mover and seconder, but
sorry.
Actually redact that now that Linda's here. So
I think I will indeed. So no apologies.
I apologise for the puppy. Brat. Total brat.
You don't need to apologise for that at all.
He's a brat.
Very cute.
Any declarations of interest?
No.
I'm on the Waitai Estuary Trust as appointed by council. Do you think that would qualify? Estuary Trust?
Well, actually, it has in the past, so what would have changed? Ouch.
Anyway, I declare it for it's worth.
Noted.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a declaration of interest rather than a conflict of interest.
Sure.
Thank you. Cindy, will you note that?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
So the next part is I'd like to move that we suspend standing orders temporarily so that we can have an informal discussion. Thank you, Kelly. All in favour?
Aye.
And then let's get into it. So what we're here to do is discuss the consultation document and provide feedback to council on the draft stormwater management plan. And as usual, Cindy will provide us with the template and we'll just type into it. I'll also take some notes and then we'll collate those at the end and I'll send it round. This one's pretty brief. They're only asking us a couple of questions. One's around the goals and then the other is just general comments. So hopefully you've all read the document. It's quite substantial one. It's runs to 112 pages. I read all the way to the references at the end.
Nice.
And noted that Jasmine Hodder-Swain is in the references.
Hodder-Swain.
She is on the TTK committee with us. All right, so feedback on the plan's proposed goals. Do you want to go through them one at a time or do we want to comment on them as a whole? I would think that 1 to 4 kind of we could comment on as a whole and then 5 and 6 say something separate. What do you guys think?
Probably one at a time, quickly, in a summary form.
All right, so comment on the first one.
I haven't got the document in front of me, BB.
You know, it's hard to have the document in front of you and be on Zoom at the same time.
I printed it.
How do you do? Oh, you printed 112 pages?
No, just the summary document.
Oh, look at this. Look what we got here. Wonder Woman in the background.
There we go.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Nice if I got to enlarge it.
Oh yeah.
Won't let me in. Oh, that's better.
So the first one are really about controlling contaminants into the Waitai.
Yeah,
And
the whole lot's just about contaminants mainly, isn't it?
Well, goal 5 is around education and goal 6 is around flooding. So we might want to talk about those separately.
yes, there's plenty to say.
Yeah, the majority of the residents, when they talk about stormwater, their main concern is the actual infrastructure and the flooding.
Yeah.
there was very, very little feedback about the actual contaminants and the water quality.
I
Yeah,
agree. We had a brief discussion in our group around how it talks about mitigation measures for contaminants, particularly around, I mean, we were talking about the main zinc contaminant being zinc roofing, and that perhaps as a part of the strategy to mitigate that, that council might want to consider subsidising that mitigation. So
yeah, that was like
re-roofing.
re-roofing. Yeah, I think that was my idea, and I kind of like it because it was my idea. No, I don't. I think it's practical. There have been subsidies in the past for like clean heating, something along those lines, where a whack from the government would be jolly nice. Funded by the government would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to think that a lot of that is a sort of a government regulatory control, perhaps over products that are used, etc. Yeah, and I agree with what Joe said. The sentiment I got was it's a wee bit Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, people aren't too worried about the contaminants in the floodwater when they're standing in the floodwater. They're probably more concerned about the floodwater. So, yeah, to me, these are
Safety.
definitely things to sort out, and we should make mention of them and comment on them. But yeah, I think flooding, which we will get to, is a more pressing issue.
Okay, so these are important but not pressing, is what we'd conclude. Would that be fair?
I think so.
Oh.
Are these like the contaminants and everything, you know, we're coming into like cleaner waterways and everything, but you know, in the end it may all go over to Three Waters and be out of our control anyway?
I don't think we can really say anything about that, given that we have no control over it and it's currently kind of not certain what will happen with that in the future.
Yes.
Yeah,
not pressing. Yeah, thank you.
I also think that, you know, I think I read somewhere that the goals are to return places like the Avon River to the quality of how it was in the 1850s or something like that, which is, you know, a great goal. However, but when you build a city of 500,000 people around a wetland, it's going to be difficult to maintain. It's great to have goals, certainly in terms of.
It's not about dogs. It's about grass clippings and contaminants being washed down in. Dogs
Yes.
are all part.
Goals rather than dogs.
I said goals. Sorry, Linda.
Oh, woof, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, Cindy, do you want to just say goal 1 to 4 is important but not pressing, because they're the ones that relate to contaminants?
Yes, the first 4 are good. There's no argument from me on it.
Yeah. And so I'm just noting here, consider subsidies and asking the government to contribute to the mitigations that they've suggested. So they've listed off a whole lot of mitigations for the contaminants, and if it requires action by our residents, then they need to provide some level of subsidy for things that we're going to be doing. So, for example, one of the potential mitigations is to ban copper brake pads. And if you're going to do that and you have to replace your brake pads, that cost should be shared.
Something smart there.
Yeah, one of the big things, like with the vehicles and the contaminants off vehicles into floodwater, if there wasn't the floodwater, then the contaminants wouldn't get into the water.
It's not floodwater,
as
it's
much,
water, which is not the same thing.
just
So it's runoff from
rain.
roads. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you put it in the east, it goes hand in hand because our stormwater pipes aren't functioning properly. So there's lots of vehicles driving through that stagnant water.
Well, no, it's stormwater. So it's just rained So you're not
Runoff.
just driving on the
Runoff.
road. That
Mm.
water runs off into the drain and into the stormwater and out to the estuary
Mm.
without
But it
any.
doesn't go down the stormwater. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, not all of it does. Most of it does, but some of it doesn't. Yeah.
Well, it might wait for low tide to go out before it goes down into the
We will get
stormwater.
to flooding. Shall we move on and then we can have
Yeah, but that
more
but
wholesome
that has
discussion
an
of
impact
flooding.
on contaminants as well.
Were you finished?
Yeah,
Do
yeah.
Keep moving?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Education and engagement in education is the next goal. So it's talking to the public about what's happening and what we can do to stop contaminants.
You know, I'm going to be philosophical here and say the people on the east care, but the people on the other side of town don't give a damn. They won't be interested. So
Yeah.
yes, it's a yes. Engagement is very important. Education is very important. But you're only educating the east. You're not educating the whole city because they don't care.
Well, yeah, I would take issue with that. I think a lot of people care, and if they knew that there were ways to reduce contaminants, then you know, and if it was a choice of products, I think that they would probably do that. I think a lot of people, you have to give them credit. You know, if there's a good choice to make, then a lot of people will make that choice. It's like, you know, plastic bags. It was hard when they took them out of supermarkets, but gosh, we've adapted pretty quickly to that change. And I think we've got to give people credit for their desire to do the right thing. So
it's not a very good analogy, because when you take the supermarket bags away, they take them away, and that's it. You've got no choice. But here,
That's the suggestion, for example, with brake pads, is they'll just remove them, and we all have to just adapt.
There's work being done in the States on the content, that harmful content, and they're eliminating it. And that's out of our hands. That's up to our government to say, no, we're not going to import brake pads that are made of X. I can't remember what the material was, but it is quite toxic. And but we can say we want to see that happen. That type of brake pad is not imported, not available.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Linda. And I think if there's a bit of education, and obviously their goals are, you know, to educate people in groups, then I think that's a really good thing. You know?
It takes me back to the briefing that we had from Sustainable Coastlines, was it, with the plastic? Those little things of plastic from the industrial plastic manufacturers, and trying to eliminate those kind of things. But it's all education for not just residents, but for businesses.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a number of steps that go hand in hand there.
I hadn't even, like, for example, I didn't know anything about this brake pad problem until I attended an event, and there was I think they're called the Stormwater Superheroes were there. It's like a trailer that's an education trailer it's aimed at kids, but it was really informative. And they said the simple thing you can do is when you get your brake pads replaced, ask them for them not to be the copper ones. And it's a very simple action to take, but it has a big impact. When you look at how much of the contaminants of copper come from brake pads, it's almost all brake pad contaminants.
I wonder what the price difference is.
Yes, and the effectiveness.
Well, quite effective, apparently, according to these guys. But so that was a very simple education campaign that taught me something new that I was able to do fairly simply.
E-bikes as well.
What about
Brake.
e-bikes?
Do they put copper in e-bikes brakes? E-bikes brakes?
I don't know. They're made of rubber rather than.
Or a lot of them are disc brakes these days. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I'm not too sure actually. That's a really good question. Yeah, I'd have to admit that the first time I saw little fish painted beside drains was really the first time I thought about the implications of, you know, street runoff. It hadn't really entered my consciousness before then. So yeah, and even that form of education is actually quite useful. We think about what's going down the drain. We used to pour all sorts of stuff down drains.
So what do we want to say about education? One thing I would say, Linda, just to your point, is that I agree with you that when the problem is at your doorstep, you care more about it, and that's definitely the case. And I think we should note that. But also that this education campaign isn't just for the ihutai, it's actually for the whole of the catchment. So it applies to all the rivers as well.
Yes, that's how I took it. Mm.
That's summary.
And what that means is that if you live near the banks of any river, which is almost everyone in Christchurch, you care about this. You care about the quality of that water. I would say we effectively are a river city, and I think I don't think there'll be that many people who didn't think about water quality with regard to their rivers, because we live surrounded by them.
No, don't wholly go with that. It is an education and awareness thing, and it has to start somewhere, so yes. But I think tomorrow, if I went for a wee drive down Wairarapa Stream, I'd still see a lawn full of clippings going into the river, which is just as toxic. That's nitrogen. But it is, we've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do have a lot more waterways in the area. It's not just the rivers.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about all the wee retention ponds and everything everywhere, and keeping those actually really healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the earthquake-related repairs to stormwater, managing stormwater, we're designed from west to east. So our ward is the host ward for all this water, and also Heathcote into the Heathcote ward as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so managing flooding, I'm assuming this is the lion's share of what we want to talk about, or what Joe wants to talk about.
Yeah.
Key topic.
Could we just review what they've got there?
What's that?
Could we just review what they've got? Bring that other script, thank you. Managing flooding to limit the quantity of stormwater. Yeah, protect houses.
Can we just one? Is that the result of all that discussion? Was just one line for point 5? Was it?
I've made a note of you have to start somewhere as well.
Okay, cool.
We didn't actually. That's all we actually said, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we were agreeing with it. But the point is, everybody's got to start somewhere. Realisation comes to us all at different times. It depends on whether you're being affected by it or you get a conscience about it.
Yeah.
This is a bit airy-fairy, this number 6.
It's got quite a substantive chapter in the full document. If you've had a look at that, it's
well, we did ask for manageable, measurable standards to be be included. I mean, this is very high level.
Yeah,
so how we're going to achieve it. And the thing that we did focus on in our own submission was we want standards that were measurable and reportable.
Yeah. For managing flooding, do you mean?
Yes. And that was also, oh gosh, that might have been applying to sea level rise. But still, it's the same thing.
Well, they interact.
It's about protecting the built environment.
Okay, so what do we want to say about this? I think they're great goals.
Great goals, yes, but how are they going to be achieved? What are the practical steps that are going to achieve them?
So
Well,
in the full document, it does talk about how that will happen. The
What was your-
112-page document.
What was your concerns, Joey?
Well, we've got that big list of feedback from the residents, and I would like to just highlight what all the residents are thinking about the actual the flood issue relating to the coastal ward.
In the feedback that we got from the other night,
Mm.
there wasn't much about this.
It was high level.
yeah,
High
this is
level,
about retention ponds and things like that in new subdivisions, etc. You know,
It's a matter of our stormwater being functional and the actual stuff that's actually not working at the moment to get it back to functionality, so that the water is running off. At the moment, it's not acting efficiently.
So did you have a read of the full document?
Not really.
Okay.
I've just read through all the feedback notes from the residents.
Bullet point number 3, that's what we're talking about. How are they going to achieve it? So they're saying here, this is the community saying, what is the council doing to ensure that compliance and meeting its obligations? So that's the how, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm not firing on all 4 cylinders. I've got a most awful headache.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm sorry, I've got it.
Yeah, I'll bet. Okay, well, so if you look through the document, what it specifically talks about, I'll just find the page. It's on page 16. It talks about flood risk, and it specifically talks about the coastal hazards adaptation planning, and it basically says that it will use that as its flood management planning.
Excuse me.
So the work that's underway currently, which is starting in the Littleton, with the Littleton Harbour, and we're getting later, that's what they're going to use to address this flooding hazard.
So if you look at the feedback from the residents, it says the SMP doesn't articulate clearly the connection with the outfalls and the coastal hazards AP. Remediating ocean outfalls part of the CHAP.
Yeah,
or otherwise.
I've read that too, but I'm just wondering, like, so what the plan says though is that that work is ongoing, and that it's up to that process to define some of that stuff. And what do we think about that? Because this will be dealt. The stuff that's in that those first bullet points.
There should be a bit of a differentiation between the actual future coastal hazards and the remediation that we have been facing for the last 12 years, and the effect that damage that we've suffered has had on our stormwater.
Yeah, so that's the same feedback we provided when we talked about the adaptation planning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So separating out flooding and sea level issues, so
there's a
coastal hazards and
remediation.
Yeah, separating out coastal hazards from earthquake issues.
Related.
Legacy issues, yeah.
And it's just reminding, presumably that's just to remind council that we expect that will happen.
But
that
also some
means-
of those issues relate to our flooding and our the stormwaters not working properly.
Mhm.
Well, they were building basins on the other side of town, Heathcote Basin, Cranford Basin,
Mhm.
Upton Basin, and so we started to get more water coming in. So there's more to manage. So that's why we didn't see it straight away. What we saw straight away after the earthquakes was the bottom of the estuary came up 1.1 metres. Same with the estuary, not everywhere, but in the main channels.
Mm.
So there was a lot of spreading out of the water. It's got to go somewhere. It's the old Archimedes principle, isn't it? But now, I still think when they need a method where they can measure, so that gives them a planning goal. It gives them firm information that they can do their planning on. But I don't see any of that. Do I? Did I? I've read this document, it feels like it was 100 years ago. Only because of my head.
Okay, so we want to make sure that the whatever the proposed solution is, that it differentiates between coastal hazards and earthquake remediation. That's one point. Joe, your point is that well, in looking at the feedback, is that the coastal hazard adaptation planning is not sufficiently covered in the document, but it's the only thing it really says. It says that this issue will be dealt with by the coastal hazard adaptation planning. So I wasn't sure about that point.
No, my point more is to do with some of the issues that we are getting from our current flooding is from our stormwater still being damaged, or say like along New Brighton Road where the
I'm just talking about the
landfill-
feedback though, just addressing the feedback. So the
Um,
bullet points that say remediation, ocean landfall, part of CHAP or otherwise, that it doesn't clearly articulate the connection between the outfalls and CHAP. Concerned that everything gets lumped under CHAP.
Well, there is a bullet point here as well about the ocean outfall pipes and the actual sand accretion, which is part of the coastal hazards adaptation thing as well. But those pipes, some of them which have been covered with accretion, have also been damaged by the quake, or they've been really old and they've been due for replacement. So the stormwater isn't actually getting the opportunity to actually drain off the streets how it should drain off the streets, which causes flooding. So, there's that kind of separation as well.
Yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22 we find ourselves in, because we actually want to address what effectively is earthquake-related issues still, but now we're bringing them back together again and saying that flooding is related to earthquake issues, but we actually need to deal with those separately. And if we put it into this stormwater management plan, they're lumping them together again. So that's a bit tricky.
Yeah, I don't think that works either. So I tend to agree with you there, Phoebe. There are two different plans, but the effect on the built environment pretty much looks the same. So
Right.
it's separating the two out,
Yeah.
saying this is our expectation as far as the stormwater goes, and this is our expectation about sea level rise.
And earthquake remediation has to happen first.
Does that make sense to you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm just having a wee look to see what else is written.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it is about making sure that earthquake remediation work happens.
I think the point that Joe was making before is on number 2 on the second page.
Yeah.
And it's a good point, but who's going to be responsible for it? Because private property gets sold with damaged pipes, and in time those pipes cause a breakdown. Hello, the new owner has on their plate, because we've gone past the period of time where you can say, oh, EQC can fix this. I think we've run out of time there. I think we have. So, you know, that falls into a basket that no one has responsibility for, except it affects other communities. Does that make sense?
Yes.
How would you like that
That
articulated?
won't make sense at all.
How would you like that articulated? Do you
I've
think?
got a headache, you do it.
I wonder, I don't know if you're all looking at it, but what Linda's talking about is the feedback from the other evening. I wonder if we could lift as a quote from this document on page 2, the statement, as a matter of principle, we need to distinguish between flood risk and protection as a result of climate change, and which is the adaptation plan, and flood risk and protection resulting from the earthquakes. There's a paragraph in there which I think is actually really good. Jo, are you looking at that also?
Yeah, I was looking at it just before.
Can we lift that out and put it into our submission? I think that's a really good summary of what we're saying as a starting point. We might want to say other things, but should we say that?
I think that's perfect.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, good. I like it.
Great. Thanks, Cindy.
And I think the community that were interested enough to attend that will be interested enough to see how you present that.
Yeah, I think it summarizes that. And then, okay, so then looking at other things, we've got the ocean outfalls. So if we were going to summarize this more broadly, what we would say is what you were saying before, Jo, and that's that what's not in here is a specific statement about maintaining infrastructure to ensure that flood management happens smoothly in our area.
Yeah. And that applies to not only our ocean outfalls, but our estuary outfalls and our outfalls into the rivers.
Yeah, our gully traps, the whole works.
Yeah.
You know, we're getting a little bit of progress there with the backflow valves being installed, but when it comes to the ocean ones being buried under the sand, if we know there's going to be rain, try and uncover them. They'll probably cover straight back up again, but to keep on the case.
You know, I've been going on about those backflow valves for terms now and asked for them to be checked, but no one comes back and says, yes, this one in Avondale is working and Avondale is now okay. Burwood, yes, we've had no report from drainage. We get this airy-fairy high level. I know they're really busy people, but we've got a job to do. We want to make sure that people are not going to be flooded because of negligence, which falls back on us.
Yeah, and as you said before, Linda, it's a network. So even if something's not working right upstream, that downstream impact is greater for us because we are the end point of all of that.
Right, we're the hosts.
Infrastructure. Yeah.
Maybe we should say that. We are the hosts.
Yeah, I think it's useful to say it. Just trying to think of the best way to say it.
We're the receiving environment for all of the stormwater of the city, or the estuary is.
Yeah.
And therefore we are hosts. And I think this means we have to have priorities that are actioned to make sure that our environment is, our built environment is safe.
Yeah.
How about if we say something like the rest of the city's stormwater management exacerbates our own situation?
Doesn't say why, so you need to say why.
So what I've got here is our wards are the receiving environment of all the stormwater for the city, and we need to have priority and we need to have a priority focus to deal with our stormwater management infrastructure.
Can I suggest one word in there? We become, you said host, this is post-earthquake. We didn't have this problem before the earthquakes. We have it after the earthquakes. So post-earthquake was in the first section of that sentence.
Yeah, I think it's also that there are new subdivisions, as you have pointed out a number of times, Linda, that that more subdivisions going in, say in Hallswell and in Preston's and other places have had an impact on our network, our damaged network, which has exacerbated
the Hallswell, the Cranford and the Flockton Basin, they all go into our estuary.
Yeah.
So Hallswell goes into the Heathcote River, and Flockton and Cranford both go into Avon.
Thank you, Cindy. I've got some notes as well too that'll just give me the prompter. I need to write something there for us all to look at. Okay, so just looking at these notes again, is there anything else we want to specifically comment on?
I had a note, I'm just going to check my notes.
Actually, I think it's looking into the future solutions. You know, once the actual water comes up a wee bit, we're going to need to actually invest more in our infrastructure on changing the stormwater system.
So in this plan, it says that the CHAP will do that.
Okay.
Are we happy with that?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of, otherwise it's putting the cart before the horse, because if we're going to come up with those plans through the adaptation planning process, this plan shouldn't really say anything that presupposes that. So it kind of makes sense. Anything else we want to say about it?
I was just looking at the feedback under earthquake repairs and the objective on the first paragraph starting with that. Does that need included, or do you think we've covered that?
Which page are you on?
On the first feedback page, there, earthquake repairs, the objective sentence or paragraph, do we need to include that?
I think we have. So we've got a couple of points about that in here. So separating out, I actually think if you go down to the last page, I think it actually does it quite well. It says most stormwater in metropolitan Christchurch eventually ends up in the estuary. When it rains in Sydenham or the CBD, it will end up in the estuary. So it's looking at it would be inequitable for coastal communities if stormwater from extreme weather events is simply disgorged into the estuary.
Would it be worthwhile adding to that sentence? It's a good sentence, but it says you said something about stormwater in, was it Wigram, Hallswell, estuary. How about you add the Cranford and the Flockton Basin? They end up in the Avon.
Yeah, I guess those are examples, but we could actually switch out Sydenham and CBD and put Flockton and Flockton.
It's showing the impact. It's showing the full impact that we're coping with here. If we say these are the stormwater systems that go into the estuary. So you've got one into the Heathcote and you've got two going into the Avon.
Wait a second, Cindy. It's just Flockton and Cranford are not suburbs. So Flockton is in. Well,
no, they are suburbs, but there's a stormwater project in both that discharge, and new ones since the earthquakes that discharge into the estuary.
What's the suburb that's Flockton?
Shirley,
Maraho?
Yeah,
probably more
Shirley Maraho,
yeah.
It's around Warrington Street in that little area to the right as you're going towards Cranford Street.
Yeah, I think that's Maraho. I think.
By Flockton Street.
Well, Flockton Street was one of the buggers.
everybody's aware of the Flockton Basin.
Oh, it was pretty terrible what they went through, and it had to
Yeah.
happen. But they didn't really want everyone to know that it was going into the Avon, just the same.
And then the other one is, should we just say Cranford?
Yeah, Cranford,
Or
and Flockton. Cranford and
Cranford's kind of Edgeware
Flockton.
or Maryvale.
It is.
Cranford Basin. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it doesn't necessarily rain, and it's about naming the area that it's raining in. Then it ends up in the basin, but then it eventually ends up in the estuary.
Actually, I think from memory, it goes into the same system as the Flockton, because that's as the crow flies, it's not far away. And that's you've got on the east side of the Cranford Basin, you've got Marihau. So roughly, oh gosh, what's the name of that road? Cranford Street, northeast, across that side there.
Yeah,
That little horror.
we're probably getting into a detail we don't need.
Yeah.
Cindy, would you be able to move that sentence up into the body of the document? Thank you. I'll just put some words around that. I think that's kind of the essence of what we're trying to say, is that, you know, it rains in the city and we end up with all the water.
That's right.
And all the problems.
Say that.
We'll become a Confederate state if we're not careful.
An island. Give it
Water
time.
toll.
Just like the Freedom Camp we've got.
A
Oh,
water
boy.
toll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else we want to say there? I'm quite keen to highlight the concept of equity there. So just underneath that comment, Cindy, do you want to just put equity? And no, just underneath the comment that you just put in there. Sorry, I'm just pointing at the screen. You can't see what I'm pointing at. Thank you. Yeah. So the idea that actually, because we are effectively the end point of all of that water, the lion's share of the resource for building and maintaining the infrastructure needs to come to us.
It's called the receiving environment.
Yeah, I've made a note of that. I'll underline it. I'll put that in there. Are you happy? Is everyone happy for me just to make that point, that there's an issue of equity?
Yeah, I like it. Very good. Very good.
Okay, what else do we want to say?
Please listen to us.
Yeah. Yeah, Linda's been on about this for 5 terms.
I know. You should get me an award for this. I'll probably just put it in a cardboard box with all the others.
Did we have any other general comments we wanted to make?
Where's the money?
Did we just mention that, sorry, BB, did we mention that the residents are more concerned about the infrastructure than the contaminant side?
It's a good comment, Joe.
Yeah, I did note that. I have said that.
Whereabouts did you write it, or you just noted it?
I've noted it in my notes.
Okay.
So my notes, I've got my notes in here amongst what Cindy has written. So I've also said that while these other things are important, they're not pressing for our wards, and the most pressing issues relate to the management of flooding.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. And I think there's a direct relationship between the flooding here and some contaminants ending up in the water.
Yeah, I think when you look at the whole city, that probably isn't the case, but it might be for I don't know. I don't understand the detail of stormwater to be able to confidently say that in a submission.
Yeah.
Though.
Well, you know, when you've got a whole lot of rain, it doesn't go down the pipes, and you've got vehicles going through them. You've got other contaminants going into the gutters as a result of the water being flooded. Or the,
Like, I do hear what you're saying. Like, that logically
Yeah.
makes sense, but
and then
unless
that
it's
ends
written
up in
down
the
somewhere,
river.
I don't really
Yeah.
want to write that down as like
Yeah,
a blanket
okay.
statement of fact.
Okay.
We just
But if
say
you find me
one
something
comment.
that says that, we can include it.
Could we say that we had robust discussion in our Residents Association forum somewhere?
Yeah, actually, I'll start with that.
Good. We're being good advocates.
Yeah.
And then I've got another one, but it's not, it's a question that's been asked, but it's not, well, it is related to this management submission.
Okay.
When you're ready.
Yeah, we'll just do a go round. Do we want to put any other comments in here? Joe, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I think we've covered most of the comments that are on the sheets.
I've got one relating to it.
Yeah.
What's that?
The very first bullet point, there are 7 other SMPs around the city. How do these fit together? That I'd love to see that, the answer to that, because is it the same as what I've been espousing about the receiving water becoming our ward for all the earthquake damage replacement projects? So how do they fit together? It's a damn good question.
Well, I had a question around that. So, and maybe staff know the answer or not, but where are the other 6? I'm assuming that this is the first one to be written and the rest are coming.
No, there would be the Hallswell,
Yeah.
there's Cranford, there's 3.
There's Heathcote, Avon,
And what's the other one?
Hallswell, Banks Peninsula, our one, and then there's 2
Stockton.
sticks, and then the other one, which is
What's the Banks Peninsula one?
it's one of the catchments.
Oh, just one, yeah. So 1, 2, how many have you got?
7.
So what's missing? Banks Peninsula, Hallswell, Cranford, Flockton.
It's Ortukaikino.
Can I have that word again slowly?
Ortukaikino. It's in the document. It's
It's at
oh, you can't see that. There's
by
a coverage
by
map.
Marshlands.
Okay. Still, it'd be good to know how they fit together. Forget Banks Peninsula because it's completely outside. Wait.
Well, although it must impact because it's a whole system, right?
It impacts if it's part of the flatland on the side of the Port Hills, but if it isn't,
There must
Yeah.
be, yeah, there must be runoff.
of course it will be.
Yeah.
That could be Heathcote.
Oh, maybe. Oh, yeah.
So we want to say how we'd like to see how the plans all fit together.
You know, I think the any Hornby stuff is going out towards Ellesmere.
That's in any other comments.
Yeah.
Cindy.
Good question.
I didn't quite have enough time to do any research about where the other plans are. I'm assuming they haven't been written yet. I'll find that out.
Yeah.
Because if they haven't, that's quite good. It means we're first, which is what we wanted. Most important.
In terms of the equity comment, the second last paragraph of the document really probably covers that that equity.
That's really good, isn't it?
Yeah, you could probably use that if you wanted, Bibi.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Sorry.
Shamelessly steal it. That's why I put that comment in there, just so I remember to cover it.
You could have a heading, equity, and then underneath that comment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be good.
It's kind of making a statement, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. Kelly, anything else from you in the other comments area?
No, I'm pretty happy with it. I feel like we're making the points that the residents are concerned about, which is all I'm really concerned about.
Yeah. All right. I think I've covered everybody. Does that mean we're finished? Must be record time.
Hang on, it's only 54 minutes. That's not like us.
The only thing I'd like to bring up, which isn't part of our submission, is that
Here we go.
the other day, the residents gave us a whole lot of questions, and it would be really, really good if we can actually get some answers from staff to the residents.
Was this in the forum?
Yes.
Let's close this out and then let's have
Yeah,
a discussion
okay.
about that.
Thank you.
Hold your horses, Chris. All right, so as usual, the next step is I'll tidy this up and present it in the comments, send it around everybody for final approval.
Okay.
So the next step is for me to resume standing orders. So I move that we do that.
I moved.
Thank you, Linda. All in favour?
Yep.
And then the last thing is that I move that we prepare the submission on behalf of the board and that the board exercises its delegate, the committee exercises its delegated authority.
Yep.
So seconded by Kelly. Thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
I hereby close the meeting.
All right.
All right.
Good job, people.
Picking up on what Joe is saying, these are questions that our community are asking of us, and I think we should go back to them and give them answers. So I guess some of this will be for the staff to answer because it's very